There's no reason to become alarmed, and we hope you'll enjoy the rest of your flight. By the way, is there anyone on board who knows how to fly a plane?
The views and opinions expressed on the Avoiding Real Estate Turbulence podcast are strictly those of the hosts and their guests, and do not reflect the opinions of Century 21 Town & Country, Ross Mortgage, or any of their affiliates.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Avoiding Real Estate Turbulence podcast. This is your pilot, John Lafferty with Century 21 Town & Country.
And co-pilot, Tony Abate with Ross Mortgage, and we are your real estate pilots. Our job is to be a real estate advocate and also make sure you're educated about the buying and selling process. We'll keep you informed throughout until we get you safely closed.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Dumnick School of Basketball. Come to Dumnick to learn such skills as the art of the trick shot, fancy passing, the death-defying earlobe catch, and the hard-to-stop toe pass. With your new skills, you'll be just dangerous enough on the court to ensure you'll never touch the ball in a pickup game. When you want your basketball career to come to crashing down, think Dumnick.
Can't wait to get that sponsor check for this one, huh? All right, in a real estate transaction, there are many reasons why you can encounter turbulence. Today, we are happy to welcome a past client of both John and mine, Mr. Randy Magner. Welcome.
Hey, welcome to the jump seat, Randy.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Good to have you here. Randy, actually, you bought your house, what was it, back in 2014 or 15?
2014, 6 years ago.
Okay. So Tony and I both had the pleasure of helping you find the home, and Tony secured the financing for you to purchase the home. And
finally found our dream house. Yeah, you did a very good job of locating that for us.
How long were we looking for your house?
A good year.
Was it about a year?
A good year.
Okay.
We needed to get into a certain school district so my daughter could go to a performing arts school. And we looked at a lot of houses before we finally found the right one.
Yeah, as I recall, we started off in the Warren Con Troy section.
Yes.
And as we discovered, there was very few houses for sale in that part of Troy that fit what you were looking for. So as we started to broaden out the search, we ended up having more things to look at, more choices, and of course, in 2014, it was becoming a very competitive market. So we had to move quickly. Did they have? I can't recall. Did the owners have possession? Did we give them occupancy after closing?
The moment we closed, they were gone.
They were gone. Okay, that's right. And as I recall, he was a pastor and also considered himself a bit of a handyman.
Yes, he considered himself a handyman. Yes, we'll get into that.
So, you move into the house, and I think the first thing to go on the fritz was your dishwasher, right?
Absolutely.
It quit working on you, and it was a fairly new dishwasher. So we had the home warranty in place.
We had the homeowner's warranty.
So the home warranty eventually replaced, got you a new dishwasher.
Eventually, it took them 3 or 4 times coming out, trying to replace parts before they finally wrote it up as a lost cause.
DOA.
Yes. And I can't recall. What else did you not do some other things to the house once you moved in?
All I did was painted it, and we were done.
Okay. So we had nice countertops, granite countertops,
Absolutely.
Nice cabinets, hardwood floors on the whole first level. Hardwood floor.
We also we moved the laundry room from the basement up to the first floor.
That's right.
And I had the master suite redone, as well as the master bath was entirely updated with granite countertops, new cabinetry, and a ceramic tile.
That's right.
And a Whirlpool tub.
Did a nice job with that. So this is probably, is this February or March you move in there?
We moved in the week before Thanksgiving.
Oh, this was no.
We sold our house in Royal Oak, Martin Luther King. I believe it was Martin Luther King Day is when we finally put that on the market, and it's sold it within the first week.
Okay, so now I back up. Now with you saying that, it was 2013.
Okay.
That you bought the house. 2013. because 2014 is where we're going with the story. So,
Okay.
You just reminded me. So it was 2013.
Is that when Snowzilla came through here? The polar vortex and Snowzilla, and we had like 6 feet of snow in the course of one winter?
Yes.
That was the time.
That was the time. It was 2013, early 2014. We got hammered. In fact, I remember coming to, you had a housewarming party, and there was it seemed like there was 6 feet of snow on the ground. I showed up.
There was about 6 people there.
Yeah, it was
one per foot of snow.
It was the people that mattered came,
Exactly.
right? They battled through the snowstorm. But yeah, that was
The important people showed up.
Yeah. So, as many of you who lived in Michigan in 2014 probably remember, around about August 14th, 2014, I believe it was August 14th, somewhere right in there, we had a horrific rainstorm, and it seemed like the cloud just sat overhead and continued to rain on us, and there were areas, Warren, Sterling Heights, Royal Oak, Berkeley, St. Clair Shores.
Where 75 and 696 come together. There was rowboats out in the out in the middle of the street because the water was so deep.
Yeah, in fact, I can recall I was my office was at 13 and a half in Woodward at that time, and I recall leaving to go home about 6:30. And Woodward was starting to flood in some areas or get water over the road, and cars just started backing up somewhere around 12 Mile, and the rain just kept coming.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to cut through to get back east to make my way back home, and I remember trying to come across 11 and a half Mile, and it was flooded, so I had to turn around, come back to Woodward, and then tried to get through side streets. And some of the side streets were so flooded, in fact, that I had to just I was doing what other cars were doing, which was just driving over people's lawns on the sidewalks to avoid the big flood areas. I mean, you did what you had to do. And it basically took me from 6:30 until about midnight to get home, to go 12 miles. And it was bad. So many of the roads were flooded. Many of the houses that never flooded ever had water in the basement, had feet of water in the basement, several feet. So that's August. And some people were fortunate their basements didn't flood.
That was me.
You were one of those people.
Absolutely. We survived the flood.
Didn't get a lick of water in your basement. You're thinking,
We were happy. We didn't know what everybody was complaining about. It was like, what's going on here?
Yep, you were one of the lucky ones. So you had this trip scheduled to go to Nashville?
No, we were heading to Indianapolis State Fair, Indiana State Fair.
Okay.
My daughter had met a couple of musicians that in Nashville that lived in Indianapolis. They were playing the State Fair. We were going down to see them, so we went down for the weekend. On the way back, got a call from my neighbor, which seemed odd, and he says, "Hey, when you guys going to be back?" I'm like, "Well, we should be pulling in about 2 hours." He says, "Okay." And next thing you know, about an hour and a half later, he calls me back and says, "So where are you?" And I'm like, "Well, we're coming up Mound Road right now. Should be home in 10 minutes. He says, "Okay, I just want to warn you that your life is going to change." We got, we pulled in the house. Him and his wife and daughter are out on the front lawn. They got a blanket spread and they're having a glass of wine. And I'm like, wow, having a picnic on our front lawn at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night? This is odd. And he says, no, his wife hands my wife a glass. She says, "You're going to want to drink this." And we're like, "But we want to unload it." No, just have a glass of wine. He says, "We heard your smoke detectors chirping. They were making noise. I came over to check things out. I looked in the windows. I called the police. And here, have another glass of wine."
Oh my gosh.
So needless to say, he had the police and him had come in through the back way and had turned off the water about when he first called me about 2 hours prior to arriving home. Apparently, a pipe or a faucet in the upstairs bathroom on the second floor. Bad fitting, bad installation. It blew, and we had water coming down the walls, saturating the floors. It was just nasty.
How long was it running? Was there any idea?
We left Saturday morning and came back Sunday night, so it could have been 24 hours.
Yeah. Wow.
However long it takes to get 5,000 gallons of water into your basement. We had a swimming pool. We had to build in a swimming pool. It was kind of nice.
Wow.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So
What was your water bill?
I have no idea. I can't remember. One of the nice things about this was I was able to pick up the phone and call my insurance agent. A friend of mine that I met through a networking group, one that you and I have belonged to, as a matter of fact, at one time. And he took my phone call at 9:30 on a Sunday night. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Randy, go find a motel. We'll pay for it. Make sure you get your most prized possessions with you. Call me in the morning. We'll get you set up. You can go anywhere you want in order to get a restoration specialist. So we walked in, grabbed some clothes, threw them in a suitcase. We happened to have our dogs with us when we went to Indianapolis, so they weren't traumatized.
Yeah.
We found a hotel room. My daughter, first thing she did when she hit her house, ran up and grabbed her guitar. Hit a hotel room that night, got up the following morning, and I had people tearing my house apart at 9 o'clock in the morning, stripping everything down to the stud.
Wow. So if I could ask, swimming pool in the basement, how deep do you think the water
About
got?
knee high. And I'm looking at 30 by 30 basement, 900 square foot basement.
That's a lot of water.
So
That is crazy.
yeah. Yeah, it was quite the traumatic experience. It was depressing. It was our dream home. We worked so hard to find this place. It tapped us out on money in order to acquire it. And here it is. I'm watching people take the drywall off the ceiling. I'm watching them load our furniture out of the house. They're taking clothing. They're sending it to the cleaners and putting it in storage. It's like I'm just watching everything that we worked so hard for just being dismantled. It was... we stayed a couple days at that hotel, and then they found us a hotel that had a kitchenette and separate bedrooms, and but it happened to be in the middle of being redone at the time because it was in Warren, and the first floor happened to be underwater there
At the hotel.
at the hotel. So they had to go through and dry everything up and put in new carpeting before we could even move into a hotel. My daughter was just starting her new school. And, we had to contact the school to find out if we could get somebody to pick, have the bus come and pick her up there and take her to school. And she didn't want the bus, the kids on the bus to see that she's being picked up at a hotel or dropped off at a hotel. So she wanted to be let off someplace down the street. Mm-hmm. She didn't want people to know that we were homeless. It was tough. We stayed at that that hotel that was nice. It had breakfast and it had dinner 4 days a week. But we stayed there for 2 months, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's when you reached out to me after 2 months? Because was it 2 months after it, or did you? You reached out to me before then, didn't you?
Before then,
to start looking to try to find a place.
A rental place.
Yeah.
Our insurance company, our new adjuster, said, well, we need to find some place other than this hotel because it's costing them way too much money. And we needed some place on the bus route that would get my daughter to and from school because both my wife and I worked, which is very rare in Michigan in, the 2010s, having both spouses work. But we had to find a place that was on the bus route so she could get back and forth to school because school started at 6:30 in the morning and got out at 2:30 in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we work, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever. So we found that difficult. Had to find somebody to give us a short-term lease, which I know you were...
That presented a challenge. And 2 dogs.
And 2 dogs. And someplace that would take a rental that would take 2 dogs.
So short-term lease, 2 dogs. And were we looking for furnished because of your situation?
No.
Okay.
Insurance covered furniture. They did a rental through one of the local rental stores.
Okay.
They
probably Court.
Probably. They did furniture, TVs, dressers, everything, pots and pans, silverware, dishes.
Yeah, so I remember trying to find you guys a place and was running into, pushback and resistance. I don't want to do a short-term lease, want a year minimum, year and a half minimum. If we're going to do a 6-month lease or a 3 or 6 month lease, because that's what we were looking at originally, 3 or 6 months. Mm-hmm. This is what the insurance company's telling you. We're gonna get everything done. We'll have you in there, back in there.
3 months, you'll be back in.
You'll be back in there. But I think
ran into some other roadblocks.
Man. So, and I will have you talk about that. But so I think eventually what we did is what I did was I just put your insurance adjuster in direct contact with several owners so that she could negotiate directly because she was telling me, well, we can't pay more than this per month, and this is our max. This is what we can pay. And of course, what's the landlord saying? Well, if I'm going to take a short-term lease, well, then I want more money per month. I want a premium for having it for only a short-term lease. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, I'm getting pushback from the insurance company saying, well, wait a second now. That's not market rate. I said, all right, I'm stepping back. You guys negotiate directly because I think in the end it'll be best for Randy and they'll be able to find a place and they'll reach an agreement. So that's what happened. They eventually talked to landlord directly and got him a place for
an additional $1,000 a month. He was willing to do the short-term lease.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So at that point, you were expecting 3 months.
3 months.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't until after the beginning of the following year, after January, that they even got somebody in there to start working on putting things back together. Apparently what had happened is our insurance company was going after their insurance company to figure out who was going to pay for this. Apparently what had happened was we actually had a forensic expert come in to take a look at the bathroom that was where the faucet blew, and come to find out that it was a faulty installation.
So when you say their insurance, you're talking about the previous owners?
The previous owner's insurance.
Gotcha.
So they determined through this forensic investigator, which blows my mind, man, that you've got forensic insurance investigators coming in to figure out exactly what caused the issue. That's pretty amazing.
So they found out it was a faulty installation. Well, the previous owner thought himself as a do-it-yourself type of guy. He had renovated a lot of the house. And, who knows whether he did it, whether he did the installation or he had one of his parishioners come in and get the Sunday chicken dinner. We really didn't know who did the installation. But he's like, no, man, I did it. All my work's good. It's like, well, forensics says that it's a little something else going on here. So then they went after his homeowners, his homeowner's insurance. But when he bought his new house, he changed insurance companies. So they went after his new homeowners. Well, or he went after his old homeowners. But his old homeowners is like, he's not with us anymore.
Wow.
You can't sue us. You'll have to sue his new homeowners. Who ended up paying for it? I really don't know, but it took 3-4 months of them negotiating back and forth to figure out who was going to pay for the renovation before they finally started working on our house and putting it back together.
Wow.
The next problem was with, having most of the Detroit area flooded at one time or another.
Contractors were hard to find.
Contractors
sure.
were hard to find.
Sure.
So if we get somebody in there working, they would work 1 day a week. And then what started out to be you only be out of your house for 3 months, end up turning into 9 months.
9 months.
9 months.
So you're out of your house from August until almost May. Wow.
And depression. Okay. Wow. I ended up in a fetal position for I don't know how many months. It was all I could do to get up and go to work because the depression had set in. My daughter climbed into her music, which is, and she wrote some decent songs about, about that. My wife ended up in a video game. She hasn't climbed out of that video game yet, and it's been 6 years.
Wow.
It was very depressing. Antidepressants, as a matter of fact, I was on for a while. Fighting with the insurance companies, insurance companies says, well, we want to put the house back the way it was, which I'm okay with, But, they're saying, well, where subflooring is going to be particle board. It's like we have hardwood floors. You can't nail into particle board. Mm-hmm. I need plywood. Well, plywood is 3 times as expensive as what particle board is. So we had to get the adjustment there. While they were doing the renovation, it happened to be raining one day, and I happened to show up. And I walked down in the basement, and I found a trickle of water running to my drain. And I'm like, well, that wasn't there before. I had a dry basement. So I call my adjuster, and he says, well, we don't handle leaky basements. It's like it wasn't leaking before. Well, that's groundwater. We don't, groundwater isn't covered. Freshwater is. That was the difference between my claim and most of the rest of Metro Detroit, was we had freshwater. We didn't have floodwater. So, they did cover everything, but it just took a while to get there. Now, finally, I went back and forth. I'm like, man, you got to cover this. My wife is going to be very upset. We didn't buy a house with a leaky basement. He said, well, I got a brand new house and it has a leaky basement. I said, that's your problem. That's not mine. Finally went to my project manager, and I'm like, Rick, you got to help me out here. He says, well, that's what he says. He says, find a way to write this up saying that it was a result of whatever caused this new leak, therefore it will be covered. Because I always, found out that, if you wanted, if you could find a reason for it, it could be covered. When I would total a car, the insurance company said, "Oh, I'll give you, $8,000." It's like, to replace this car with all these accessories, it's going to be $9,500. Okay, we'll give you $9,500. But you had to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my project manager, my builder, Rick, found something that did it, and next thing you know, we got a guy coming in, putting in a weep channel. They had dug up one edge of the basement, put in piping, and routed that to our drain. And therefore, if any water came down the wall, it hit that channel and got directed towards the drain. So now nothing in my basement is wet, which is nice, considering all the stuff that I lost in my basement before.
I remember talking to you at several points, and you saying, "Well, I'm working on my list right now, and going through every single item in the basement, clothing, curtains, a lot of the stuff that you had from your Starbright days.
From my theater, yeah.
Yeah, from the theater that you ran. And
speakers, soundboards, lighting.
So you spent a lot of time where on eBay, Craigslist, figuring out what things were selling for to determine their value so that you could place a value on them and give that to them that this is what I lost and this is what I need to be made whole from.
Well, they had a person come in.
Mm-hmm.
And that person came in and inventoried everything that was in the house. And it's damaged, replacement value, and this and that. Wireless mic, they told me it was worth $12. Well, it was an Audio-Technica wireless microphone with receiver that we used for the band. And I knew that I paid $300 for that at the time. It couldn't be depreciated down to $12. So I had to get the model number of what it was and turn that back into them, and which they did make the adjustment.
You were doing that a lot.
Yes, you can say that.
You literally had, 3 jobs. You had your 9-to-5 job. You had the job of keeping everybody in the family together and keeping morale moving forward. And when you're not doing those 2 things, you're trying to find out value for these things that, of course, they're going to say, well, this is only worth this much. No, I know it's worth more than that. And now you got to go find it, what it's sold for, what it's valued at on all these different sites. And then you got to show it to them to prove to them that that's the actual value.
I had Renaissance costumes, official Renaissance costumes from the Renaissance Fair. And I know what we paid for those, which is retail. And they were saying, no, it's the costume in a bag that you get at Target for $39. It's like, no, that's
that
not.
As soon as you put it on and go to adjust it, it rips.
Yeah. No.
It's made out of paper.
No, that's a leather vest. So it was quite the work. But like I said, as I told you, Tony, if they say you're going to give you $8,000 for a car that got totaled, and you can prove to them that, with all the additional luxuries that you have on your car, the power windows, the power locks, the remote control entry, it's now worth $9,500. Well, they're going to give you that $9,500.
Yeah, it's a shame you have to push that hard, though.
Yes, it was.
And it's almost like, not to slam our friends in the insurance industry, but it's almost like they're going to come in low, knowing that there's a percentage of people that are going to challenge it and a percentage of people that won't. And so their bottom line looks a little better.
A friend of mine's daughter was a newlywed and young, in their 20s. It was about a year after we went through our ordeal. And they had a fire at their house. And their insurance company wasn't budging on anything. I mean, when it came time to paint, they didn't remove the TV set; they just painted around it.
Oh my gosh!
And there were drips on the TV screen. There were this and that. And I'm like, look, you go back to them and you tell them, you said you would put my house back the way it was to start with. This is not what this type of craftsmanship is not what I bought.
Wow.
And if you put up a big enough stink, it's not that they will cave, but my wife was in the insurance business for a while, and she's the one that taught me.
Okay,
you let them know what you got, and that you're not budget, but we gave a little and we took a little. So.
How much help was your insurance agent through the entire process? It sounds like he was on it at the beginning. How was he as things were going? Timeline was getting pushed out, and you were battling to get value for things.
Ken was very helpful.
Okay.
Ken was very helpful. Of course, he didn't really want to buck the insurance adjuster that was working with his company. But he would say, well, Randy, if you did this, or if you approached it this way, things will help out. Ken's a good guy. He a very good friend, and I think it actually made us closer.
Okay. That's good. That's a good insurance agent then.
Yeah. He, when it came time to reinsure the house, well, first thing we thought was going to happen was once we got moved back in, they were going to cancel us.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect that, or your rates would be astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
It really did not change.
Well, that's great. Yeah.
Wow. They must have got a big settlement from the other insurance company then.
All in all, I think we were close to $300,000.
Oh my gosh.
To replace our house or fix our house and replace the belongings.
Yeah.
So everything got put back together.
Yes.
Do you feel like the craftsmanship and the work that was done, you feel like you have your house back? Do you feel like you have a newer house?
Some of the craftsmanship is still a little sketchy. I mean, we did, get, the upgraded cabinetry for the kitchen, but, my drawers have a tendency of not staying closed. The gravity pulls them out a little bit. I've had the company back out a couple of times to fix, to take a look at that and supposedly adjust it. It still doesn't work. Tile in my foyer, the grout is come out a little bit. The bathroom, I just recently reattached my soap dish to the wall. Mm-hmm. I don't know, 6 years. I think it should last longer than that. But
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So
the lady that was cleaning our house happened to tear the soap dish off the wall when
some hard scrubbing. Yeah.
when she was scrubbing our bathroom.
Oh man. So you went through something that was tremendously traumatic and terrible. I'm sorry you had to go through that. But if you had to advise a homeowner who has not gone through that, or as they say, if you had to tell your younger self, what would you tell people to prepare for, or what would you do differently?
When shopping for, when you need to get homeowners insurance, definitely. When shopping for homeowners insurance, don't pick the cheapest guys that are out there. Find somebody that actually has a name. It may cost, when you stop and think about it, it may cost $10, $15, $20 more a month, but it's what you get in the long run. The other thing that I don't do as many home projects as what I did prior.
Okay.
Even though I can do that, I'd rather have somebody else come in and change out that faucet or put in that new electrical outlet.
Because they're licensed, bonded, and insured.
Exactly.
And if something should happen...
If we sell that house and something should happen to the next owners, I don't want to be liable for it.
I bet a lot of people don't know that. I know that was an education for me, that the insurer will look at it differently, especially if they can find a flaw in the install and conclude, well, it wasn't done by a licensed and insured contractor. This changes how they're going to approach the claim.
Exactly. The insurance company, the adjuster, actually brought our inspector, wanted to see our reports from the inspector, and was asking the inspector why he didn't see the faulty installation on the faucet.
Wow.
Do you recall what he said?
I can't remember what was said, but they did not hold him responsible for it.
Okay.
And there was nothing on the listing that said, they didn't give it that extra half-inch turn.
Yeah. Boy, and I don't know how an inspector could even, that's so darn granular. They're not going to check every fitting in a...
Most inspectors, at least ones that I've worked with, they can be extremely... detailed and really get into the minutia of things, but there's just some things they can't visually see or inspect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it almost makes me wonder if they were looking for the opposite. If he had called it out and warned you and nothing was done, then then it might change their approach.
Well,
yet
that
again.
might
It was,
been, yeah.
it was twofold. That's what they were looking for.
Yeah.
Our inspector, I got to happened to get to know him very well because he inspected 2 other houses. We were getting ready to go to the multi-discount plan because the couple of houses that we looked at purchasing before, we would have the inspector come in, check everything out, and then they wouldn't appraise for what. And it was tough to put 20% down and then give them an extra $20,000 to get up to the price that they needed to be.
Yeah, you remember that time? I mean, we had appraisal issues up the wazoo in 13, 14, even into 15.
Yeah.
I mean, we were industry-wide, we were complaining about it. We had more problems not with just, in your case, but with other buyers. And, problem is in the early spring, you got issues, and then houses start selling in the summer, value gets up, and then after 90 days, most appraisers don't like to use anything over 90 days, especially if there's other comparables. So value do this in the summer and this in the fall and winter and this and this. And I think we're a little better now with everything. There seems to, because of the inventory that's selling, but back then it was a challenge.
Well, back in the 90s, it was like, the appraiser would walk in and say, "So how much is this house going for? What do we need to write it at?"
Right. Mm-hmm.
Even into the 2000s.
Yeah.
I listed this house. This is probably 2003. Sold it to this guy for $330,000. Nice 3-bedroom, 1-bath. And so year later, he's like, "Yeah, I want to move. I'm gonna head back to where I grew up." I said, "Okay." I said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, you've only been in a year." He said, "Yeah, but I did this and I did this and I did this." I said, "Well, it's a hot market. Let's see if we can sell it at $410." And he said, I want to push it because it was crazy at that time in 2000. It was crazy. And so I said, let's try it at this number first. Let's try it at 400 or 410 first, see what kind of activity we get. If we get a lot of activity, we can always change it. Just because we listed at this price and somebody offers you that price doesn't mean you have to take it. So we listed it, and literally 2 hours later, had a full price offer. And he said, "All right, I don't want to sell it at that price. Let's raise it up to here." We raised it to 440. 2 days later, we had a full price offer for 440.
Gosh. Unreal.
It was crazy. So he sold it for $100,000 more than he did the previous year. And again, but this is West Coast.
Yeah.
He made a killing.
Wow. Over a 1 year time.
And it appraised. I remember the appraiser coming through. He's like, "So what's the purchase price?" I said, $440. "What did it sell for last year?" $340. "All right, no worries. I'll have it in the next couple days." That's how the appraisals work, huh? Well, okay.
Yeah.
But that was the Wild West days, and that's why we had the issues that we had.
But in
sure.
2013, 2014, it was people were wanting a high dollar, and they were being appraised 20, 25, 30,000 less.
Yeah.
Yeah, appraisers look in the rearview mirror, right? They're looking at old data, and we're on the heels of the recession at that point, and it was tough. It was tough, and they were definitely under the magnifying glass at that point too.
Yeah, they got beat up pretty bad in 08, 9, 10 for colluding with lenders to bring value, and there was truth to that for sure.
Yep.
So the pendulum swung
For sure.
all the way over there, and then back over this way to being ultra conservative in value, and I think we're somewhere close, but we're still on the conservative side.
I would agree. Yeah, no appraisers get into trouble for being too conservative, right? So,
no,
right or wrong, that's kind of
true.
How that goes. Yeah.
So you're in the house back now 6 years, and does it still feel like home to you?
I like the place. My wife never really settled back in.
Okay.
never really settled back in. She still has some of that trauma going on. We're actually looking for my daughter to graduate from college, figure out where she's going to land, and then downsize and move to be nearer.
Yeah.
Do you ever, whenever you've had to go out of town, and you've been traveling a lot.
I turn my water off before I leave the house.
Do you really?
Yes. I go down, I turn it off at the main. Yeah.
Not taking any chances.
Once is enough.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Yep.
Make sure there's no fires, and we're out of there. Yeah. It was one of the odd things was when they put my house back together, my gas fireplace wouldn't light up. So we had to get them back in. Whoever did the installation there had to get them back in to take care of that. My overhead lights, the electrician, there was a little problem in there with him, so we had to get him back in to take care of things. I don't know whether it was. I know they were using, people that were licensed and insured. I don't know if it was just there was so much work going on that the contractors, the subcontractors, were able to put that much time in it, or whether it was just let's get this done and get on to the next one.
Yeah, it was a tough time with contractors. Yeah, for sure.
Having grown up in construction, it was let's get her done and get on to the next one.
Sure.
So,
yeah, that was an interesting time with everything that happened, with the big flood and everything.
Yeah.
So any you've given some advice as far as making sure that you don't skimp on your insurance, because when you do, if you call a 1888 number for your insurance online, and you don't have an agent who's been in the business,
you don't have Ken that you can call at 9:30 on a Sunday night. He takes your phone call and says, "Randy, let me help you through this."
Yeah,
and he did. He helped you throughout the process.
Yes.
He gave you advice. He offered different ways to phrase things so that you could phrase it properly, so you would get reimbursed for things.
Yes.
I had a friend who hot water heater was flooding into the crawl space underneath his house. It was a rental property, and I remember going to the house and saying, something's not right. It is really humid in here. The windows had the film on them from the humidity inside the home. I said, something's not right. And it sounds like there's water running. I can hear it. And they said, no, it's fine. It's just the hot water heater doing its thing. Or I said, I don't know. I something isn't right here. I don't know what it is, but you got to get it checked out. And I think they let it go like another day, and then finally said, okay, we got to get, something's not right. So going to the crawl space, all that humidity, of course, when it's in the crawl space.
Oh my gosh.
So it warped all the wood floors in the house. Had to have all of them replaced, and the insurance company did not cover it.
Wow.
So that was all out of pocket for that guy.
Yeah.
Plus, you have to get in there and get everything dried out so there's no mold.
Boy.
That's why they ended up having to gut everything down to the studs on our house, was to stop the mold.
And they probably had to treat all the studs as well with a chemical just so mold wouldn't grow. I'm sure.
Yeah, I've heard that process before when there's that concern. Yeah.
So you're very smart in doing what you're doing because of your experience. You're more not defensive, but you're more liability conscious of. I could fix that, but I'm going to hire somebody to do it, and we're going to keep track of the invoice. I think there's a lot of people out there, a lot of do-it-yourselfers that tear out a kitchen and replace it themselves, or fix.
I did that in Royal Oak.
Yeah, or fix a faucet, or do different things and
install my own garbage disposal in Royal Oak.
Yeah, and Now, of course, you've got perspective, so you look at that completely different. And, this was a discussion that we had during the whole foreclosure process crisis from 08 to 15 is you'd have these flippers come in. They'd buy a house for 20, 30 grand, and it would be gutted, and they'd come in and do work and turn it around in 6 months. And you'd always say, don't know how good a work this is, but I'm sure we're going to find out in the next 3 or 5 years.
The house that we put a bid on in Troy was happened to be just down the street from the rental house that we ended up in. Was one that was flipped, and we could not get it financed because they could only mark it up 20% or something more than what they originally bought the house for at that time, and they had bought it for $60,000-$80,000, was trying to sell it for $220,000.
Yeah. There are programs, and especially back at that time, where there were restrictions on the change in value from seller to the resale point. So that's somewhat relaxed, but to your point, is because flippers were just all over the map. And
then
what
once
they were
we
doing.
got it to the point of it didn't appraise. We got the financing, we got everything, and it didn't appraise for what they were asking for.
Yeah,
And then we negotiated back and forth, and then it was like
those were tough.
It was a fun time. It was a fun time. That's why when we finally found our dream home and we moved in, we were happy. Mm-hmm. And then when everything comes crashing down, it's quite depressing.
Yeah.
So, of course, today I can laugh about it.
It's in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And you can travel safely knowing that the water shut off at night.
Right. All right.
Well, thanks for coming in and sharing that.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to see you again.
I think it's it's important for people to see and hear that sometimes homeownership can be a little rocky, and sometimes things happen that are out of your control, and man, it can take a while to get back to normal, I guess.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's been a challenge. And interestingly enough, there still seems to be a little bit of a hangover from when it happened with your wife, and sounds like with Bernadette too a little bit. So it's sad in a way that happened, and man, it seems like it's just forever changed how you guys feel about the house. Even though it's home, it still kind of feels like not totally the place you bought,
right?
Because it's been changed.
Although everything is updated and everything is fresh, and I got new hardwood floors, and we had a few changes made.
Okay.
One of the things that we had made was changed was the way we enter our basement. The basement was off the main hallway as you come in through as you come into the house, and we moved it to the kitchen and put in a large pantry, and put in 2 doors. That way, when the band's playing in the basement, it has 2 doors to go through. And we insulated the walls to keep the sound in the basement, so when we're having band practice, it isn't as loud as for our neighbors as what it could be.
So some silver linings along the way, as traumatic
I went
as
from,
it was.
a 28-inch door to my basement to a 36-inch door. That way now I can carry speakers and a drum kit and everything else down into the basement.
You're carrying those?
Oh, yeah.
With that fake hip?
Yeah, you betcha. Who do you think the roadie is?
Dad's the roadie.
Yeah.
And
Dadager.
all the hats.
The dadager, right.
Well, thanks, Randy. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Avoiding Real Estate Turbulence. If you'd be so kind to subscribe and review and rate, we would appreciate it. Please share with your friends, family, and coworkers that they too can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and AvoidingRET.com, where you'll find our contact information and every episode. You can also find us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify.